So today's discussion, very, very briefly, I'm going to talk about digital platforms. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I want to make sure that we're level set. We're going to spend a lot of time on what your members are telling us about what they think about their supers and what they want from their supers. A social business, a best practice from the United States, which I think has done a phenomenal job in really using social media. They're in your space. Of course, we're going to have to talk about opportunities and risks, and then next steps. You know, if attracting and retaining members are critical for your success as a business, then digital media has to be part of your business strategy. New applications are driving digital business. There will be 20 million smartphones in Australia by 2016. It's no news to any of you that the web is the primary place now that people go for information. And iPads are changing user expectations as to what we expect from business partners. There's been a demographic change. I mean, they're no longer called Gen Ys and Gen Xs, but they're called digital natives. And digital natives have grown up with technology, and they have the expectation, again, of personalized, of immediate, and digestible chunks. But this is now spreading across all generations, and that leads to a changing behavior. What research is showing us is that by the time that somebody has made a decision to go meet with a business partner or a vendor, 60% of the decision has already been behind them. And that's because they've gone to the web, they've gone to social media, and they've gone to friends. So therefore, for businesses to survive, organizations must respond to competition. I'm not going to lecture to folks in the room that know this much better than I do, but you have had a really evolving environment for super funds. Regulations for decades, a need now, a cry for additional transparency, as well as governance. Because funds are now getting more and more money are coming into your funds, competition from banks and insurance companies, they're looking at a very viable business potentially to get into. You know, in 2007, Towers Watson did a survey of the top 300 funds in the world. At that time, Australia had 8 of the top 300. We did that study again in 2013, and Australia was 15. So that just shows you the mergers that have happened over the past 6 years, as well as the increased funding coming in. Also, you have to worry about self-managed funds. Granted, it's a very small percentage, but that's growing. From a demographic standpoint, 25% of Australians are over the age of 65 today. So they will be looking to their funds to help them as they determine how best to make sure that their assets last them through their life. And then technology, we've talked about it briefly, but it will impact education and tool strategies. But technology, we're going to talk a lot about how we use technology for communication. But I don't want to underestimate the fact that technology is going to be fundamental in changing your business model over the next 3 to 5 years. And we're talking about how we use technology for communication today because it's a very easy way to start to understand it and start to sort through what the terminology is. You know, there was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal about 3 weeks ago. And in the United States, CEOs are hiring digital coaches. Not because they want to run around the country tweeting or putting up blogs, but they're hiring digital coaches because they understand how crucial and how critical digital is for their business strategies. So they need to understand what this is, how it will impact them, so that they can make sound financial business decisions. The nice thing about digital platforms is that from a communication standpoint, they really do enable a level playing field. You can be innovative at a much lower cost point. You can drive meaningful interaction with your members. Technology allows you to have very immediate information and access. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but what is up there is a map of Australia. It's a Facebook heat map of Australia, so you can see where all the Facebook accounts are in Australia. A lot of black in between, so a lot of ground to cover. Because it's intermediate and inactive, you can have transparency, and you're able to find, from a measurement standpoint, what your members are looking at, what resonates. So, in preparation to coming to Australia, we decided we wanted to do a little bit of research. So in January, we sent a team out to do man-on-the-street interviews. We wanted to get all generations, and we wanted to get a wide range of occupations. So we talked to surfing coaches, we talked to entrepreneurs, we talked to businessmen, we talked to retirees, and we talked to stay-at-home moms. We wanted to understand what they thought about their supers, you, and what they wanted from you in the future. So the first thing that we probed on was how important was it to have personalized and tailored information. So let's take a listen to what they had to say.
We basically only receive information via a letter, and I do get the odd email, but it's nowhere near enough.
I don't think you get a lot of direction about other options that you could take in order to increase your super or make your super better.
More advice likened to our situation would be greatly appreciated.
I would certainly value a personalised touch from my superannuation fund.
Yes, I would like to see more personalised advice.
This is the sort of thing that I'm really crying out for, is some personalised advice.
I feel like particularly at times of financial crisis like the recent GFC, that it would have been quite useful for me to receive advice from my super fund, particularly as I'm a long-term investment for them. I feel like I didn't receive that, and that perhaps would have been useful.
Well, as you can see, your members are looking for information targeted to their point in life. They really don't want to be thought of as a face in the crowd, and they want more information from you, not less. So moving to the next clip, technology has enabled around-the-clock access. So we were interested in how they felt about communications, access, and reach. Again, let's take a listen.
I access via the internet. I have a password and I log on regularly.
If it was a really easy way to access your super and a quick way, because everyone seems to be on the go and working all the time, it'd be quite a good idea and easy to look at.
I also access the website if there's a question I have particularly.
My super fund has a very good online portal for selecting different investment types. So I do regularly have a look. Generally online is the most efficient method.
If the markets fell rapidly, it would be nice to maybe get it just an alert on your phone or something like that. Maybe a Twitter would be good.
I would probably prefer to find some sort of social media. I find that probably 90% of my information I do get from social media or my own research. So it'd be handy to have it more accessible.
Yes, I would like the ability to be able to access my super fund remotely. So when I'm travelling, just to have that fingertip response would be fantastic.
Now that social media is so much a big part of our lives, I could see, yes, the super funds really getting on board with social media and advising us and giving us alerts through social media, through Facebook, through Twitter. It's all there, it's all available. Get on board, yep.
Well, was anybody else surprised with the interest in social media across all age groups? Well, we were, and we went back and did a little bit more research, and we found that over 50% of Australians between the ages of 65 and 75 access a social media platform at least once a week. Now, we're assuming that they're accessing the platform for social reasons and to catch up with friends, certainly not their grandchildren or children, because they've moved on to other platforms at this point in time, once they realize their grandparents are on Facebook. But what it does tell us is that once somebody gets comfortable with a platform, it's very easy then for them to move to a similar type of platform that a business might be offering and take their information from that aspect. So mobile access was a theme.
I would love it if the company had an app that I could access, because I do that a lot on my phone. I mean, it's right there to access, so that would be very helpful.
Yeah, if my fund offered an app, I'd have a look at it and see if it could do anything for me.
Essentially, I'd use an app for information, of course. Hopefully, the app would be, if I did need that instant information that you said before, then I could possibly just get onto the app and find out.
I already use their online services quite a lot to access my investment portfolio. So just like a banking application, it would be helpful as long as it was provided on different platforms.
Because I tend to travel quite a lot, particularly through my work, and I like to do it as a pastime, it would be useful to receive updates on my super remotely, perhaps through my mobile device or my iPad.
I have an iPad probably like every 51-year-old mother in the world these days. I'd love an app. You know, you flick through your apps on your iPad, you see these little apps that you've got, and it just reminds you that, oh, that's right, I've got that, and I can get on there whenever I want.
So as you heard, it's more than just about checking balances, but they want to get more information from you. You know, in prep for this presentation, we looked at many of your websites just to get a good understanding of what kind of educational content that you offered your members, and we were really impressed. There is some really, really good websites out there with some really strong educational content. So we wanted to find out what your members thought about it. And Gus, I'm going to turn to you one more time, and can you put up tools in education? I'm having a bit of a problem up here. Last video.
No, I'm not aware that most funds offer education tools. Maybe if I got some education from my super fund where to invest it, then I might be interested and I might look at it more often.
No, I'm not aware that most funds offer education tools at all. I've never heard of that.
I wasn't aware that superannuation funds offered education. That sounds like a fantastic idea and something for the younger generation.
I would be more interested in investment education in particular if there were specific education tools.
An education tool online would be very helpful.
But if it was there and I knew it was there, yes, I would definitely use it.
I do need more education, so that is something that I would definitely be interested in.
Yikes, you've got great content and people don't know it's there. The education is a really, really great way to drive your members to your website, and they can find more of what you have to offer. Now I want to talk about best practice. And first of all, I want to do a caveat. When I picked this particular company, it's a US-based company, I honest to God did not realize that it was one of the sponsors of this conference. So we are not promoting this particular company. They just happen to have one of the best practices, and they're in your space. So the company I'm going to share just really briefly with you what they're doing is Fidelity. For maybe the less than 1% in the room that may not be aware of Fidelity, they're a US-based company, they're private, they have over $4 trillion in assets, they have roughly 564 funds they manage, and they have over 20 million members. The example I'm going to show you here was on their Facebook page, and they were trying to reach out to retirees. So what you notice first about this is look at the visual. You've got this guy, he is in retirement, he's kayaking, he looks young, he looks happy, he looks viral. I know when I retire in a couple years, I don't want to imagine myself sitting in a rocking chair with a cat on my lap. This is the kind of image that I want, and this is the kind of firm I'd like to connect with that kind of sees me in that kind of a retirement. But what I thought was extremely fascinating about this Facebook post was, when it comes to money, are you a driver or a passenger? Can you imagine the amount of really interesting conversation between partners as to who's the driver and who's the passenger in financial decisions? But what they did was so clever. If you look at the bottom, you click on so you can take a test to see who is the driver and who's the passenger. And guess what? It takes you directly to their website, which at that point they can start to get information, more information about you if you're a member, or if you're a prospect, they start to understand the areas that you have interest in. Because with social media, you don't want to load it up with a lot of content. The purpose of social media is to drive people back to your website, where then you can have some stickiness and you can interact with them, and they're able to really understand what you as a super have to offer. The other thing they did around retirement, and they timed this one, again, this is Facebook, and they timed it around the start of the US school year, which was in September. So they went onto their website and they looked to see what was some of the most popular classes or education that people took. And they did a theme all around starting school. Obviously, if you click on any one of those courses, it takes you back to their website where you register, they get some information about you, and you're able to take the course. But while they launched this, they also did a soft launch into gamification, and you can see this retirement word search. And they had an individual who was kind of coaching people along. So you had somebody from Fidelity, and they were answering questions, making it very human, helping people find what they needed to find, kind of taking them to the right spot. Very, very effective campaign. The last thing I want to talk about from Fidelity, and they are a pro in this, they go back, they probably were one of the first to put on an app, and this was in 2009, 2010. And it not only allowed people to track their portfolio and look at their individual contributions, but also provides them and feeds them research and news. And why an app is so important is because you start then to partner with that company when you have the app on your mobile phone. Every time you pick up your smartphone and you see that app, it reminds you, oh yes, one more notification that that's my super, that's the company that I do business with. I don't know how many of you have apps from your airlines. I know I do. Delta's the airline that I fly the most. I've downloaded the app. I go out of my way to fly Delta. I feel a personal connection with them. They provide me updates on things that are happening. They know where I'm traveling. They know what's happening in the world and will give me, tell me where I may need to be aware of certain things. So once you can get an app, your brand then goes on the individual member's phone, and you can start to form that connection. So of course we can't talk about digital media or social media in particular without talking about opportunities and risks. But let's first talk about what's the gain. If you're in social media, you can monitor the trends and respond in real time. There's tools that you can buy that tell you if you're being talked about out there, and allows you to go in, join the conversation. Do you have a point of view? Maybe you want to have a point of view that's different than another super's point of view that you want to get out in the media. What if somebody is saying something positively or negatively about your fund? You want to know about that and be able to respond accordingly. By being part of the conversation, it also allows you to measure and modify, and you can go back to your website, which again is where you're trying to drive everybody is back to the website, and you can change that content so it becomes much more relevant to the conversation that's out there. Because it's immediate and you can push things out to your members, you have much more transparency with your fund members. And this is an additional line of communication. It doesn't mean you stop doing the other pieces of communication, but I'll tell you, over the years that we have been doing digital and social media at Towers Watson, our costs have gone down rather than up. Over the years, we found that we have not had to do as much of the traditional type of communications we had in the past, and our budget has actually been able to be reduced because we're much more involved in the digital world. Of course, there are risks and there are challenges. The first is security, and that's the first thing everybody worries about. I was telling Debbie I was called in front of the risk committee of our board because they were concerned about the risks. We've got roughly at Towers Watson about 42 to 44 platforms around the world: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter accounts, Pinterest, and we have them all consolidated under one platform called Hootsuite. So nobody is allowed to post or blog, first of all, without training, without our permission. But also it allows me back at headquarters that if something does go awry, and we've never had anything go awry, I can pull the plug fast. We can go dark. So it gives you, so there are tools out there that give you ultimate control. Also, you update your social media policies, but the interesting thing that people always talk about, they worry about crisis around social media and what happens if you're on social media and you have a crisis. I worry more about if I don't understand social media and have a crisis. Your traditional crisis can go viral in minutes. And if you don't have the experience, if you don't have the tools, if you don't have the knowledge, it can spiral out of control before you're able to stop it. We had a situation over in Europe in which a client posted something that they were unhappy with us about. We were able to see it relatively quickly. Within 30 minutes, we were back to that client with a resolution. And what could have been a relatively ugly viral post going out there turned into a positive because we were so responsive. It's worse if you don't have the tools and you don't have the knowledge of what's happening out there. There's always a regulatory risk, but that's no different than any other type of communication. You just have to know what's education and what is advice and make sure that people that are posting clearly delineate between the two. And then brand reputation. Whatever you do digitally is just an extension of the brand that you have today. But I will tell you, a weak digital footprint is better than no digital footprint. If you're looking to acquire newer, younger, more of the digital natives into your fund, they're going to go out there and search for you. And if you're not out there, they're going to assume that you don't really get them, and they're not going to be necessarily interested in searching around and finding out more information, but will go to a fund that they feel is a little bit more current with the way that they like to receive and consume information. So, what are the risks of not embracing new applications, technologies? Lagging behind competitors. I mean, can you imagine the person that decided the phone was a passing fad and stayed with the telegraph? I mean, they were merged, they went out of business. So you have to keep up and see what's happening. We are never going back. Once this communication evolution has happened, you don't go back to the telegraph. You don't go back to the Pony Express. The train has left the station. All that's going to happen is it's going to accelerate. So you need to understand what's happening now because tools are going to change. Facebook, LinkedIn, they're going to go away. They're going to be replaced by other things. Technology is going to be even faster, smarter. And if you're not current with what there is today, it's almost impossible to catch up. You have no voice in the conversation. Thought leadership, you want to have your point of view out there. We talked about missing changes and trends. And you can appear to be unresponsive to your members if you don't react if they say something online, and therefore you can lose members. So as we said, technology will fundamentally change your business model over the next, maybe even earlier than 3 to 5 years. Looking at it from a communication standpoint is a really easy way to start to understand what's happening. And I know many of you are already doing that, but also chatting with some of you over the last couple days are just starting to think about it. So let's talk about next steps in your digital strategy. Understand the digital landscape. Go out, do some market research. Find out what are the platforms that your members are on. How do they want to hear from you? What platforms are your future members on? How do you best reach out to them? And don't just do that once every couple years. Keep on after and continue because technology is changing, platforms are changing. Look at both traditional and emerging competitors. I know that you have Blockbusters here in Australia. We used to have it in the United States. And Blockbusters, as you know, is a place that you drive to and you rent a DVD and then you return it in a day or two. They had a competitor called Netflix. And what Netflix advantage was they mailed it to you. But it still was a couple days to get it and send it back. So there was some kind of a balance. All of a sudden in the United States, technology became incredibly cheap. Overnight, Netflix now downloads through your TV. So I could sit there with my friends and family at 5:25 and decide I want to watch a movie at 5:26. I hit a button and there it is. Who would drive to Blockbusters 20 minutes away to take a DVD to drive home? They totally changed the business model. You need to understand not only what your competitors are doing, but your potential competitors. So as the funds get bigger and more money come in here, who is looking to get into this space? What are they doing today? How could they might use that against the super funds in order to be able to take on additional members? And what can you learn from them? How can you take some of that and move it into things that you're doing today? Know your risks and how best to mitigate. We talked about risks already. We do dry runs with our legal counsel. what ifs. What if this happens? What would we do? What if this happens? What would we do? So we feel pretty well prepared because we've all done some scenario planning. Assess your business model and strategy. This is not a marketing issue. This is a business issue. You need to bring the teams of business leaders, marketing, IT, finance, HR, and risk, and look at where does digital fit in now and where will it fit in the growth plans. Does your digital footprint align with your members' needs today and tomorrow? And what is the impact of technology? So make it real, be bold. The great thing about social media is that you can take chances with it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't cost that much. You take it down and you try something else. Experiment, be bold. Measure, measure, measure. Involve your leadership team. Ideas just don't come from one part of the organization. Some of the best ideas and innovation comes when you bring a group together and you start to think about how things are going to work. Engage your members, find out what they want from you, and look for digital shifts. What's next, and how can you leverage it before your competitors?